Hello everyone and welcome to the Masters Competition. I'm Jean-Paul Manu. Today's Money Masters Competition comprises 3 professional investors and a novice, each provided with $500,000 to invest. The participants have invested in stocks, bonds, and collective investment schemes, and they have been sharing their strategies over this one-year period. At the end of the period, the top portfolio manager will be declared. So let's continue with the Masters on this very exciting journey. Welcome back. On today's program, we are joined by all 3 professionals. André Yap, our professional from CUFMC Management Limited, Chrevaughn Legister, our professional from Proven Wealth, and Timar Jackson, our professional from NCB Capital Markets Limited. Good day, gentlemen. Glad to have you all on the program.
Good day, John-Paul.
Hi, John-Paul.
Welcome, welcome. Appreciate your all 3 of you coming on today. Gentlemen, let's get started. What do you see as the likely recovery pattern for COVID-19 in Jamaica? Who wants to take that first?
So I'll take it first since I'll just take it first.
You can't all talk at once. It's going to mess up the microphone. Go ahead, Chrevaughn.
I don't have much to say on it, John-Paul. The truth is that I'm not a scientist. I'm not a medical expert. I'm not out in the field, right?
Sure.
And I go based on the information that is provided in the public domain. From where we're sitting now, hard to project and pattern that recovery period. From where we are now, I think COVID is here to stay for a long time. What is evident though, I'm not sure if we have reached our natural peak, because the situation here was a bit tricky in terms of the numbers were fueled by a particular incident. So I'm not sure if we're at our natural peak, but you can see we're back to a situation where the daily reported numbers have declined somewhat. Right. So truth is, I'm really not sure about the recovery pattern per se. If it is that we're at the natural peak, then it could mean that things could level off and we may go back outside, go back to life. It may not be as normal as before, but at least we can be a little bit more cautious and try to see how best we can maneuver the situation.
Well, we see in the United States, most of the states, I believe 43 out of the 50 in the Union have started some kind of slow coming back out into normality. And I believe that they have started to see an uptick in the virus. Again, there's some more cases coming back out. So it's almost like it's too soon. We are being a little extra cautious, perhaps. That seems like perhaps the way to go with this?
So I'll follow up on what Chrevaughn said previously. Like you said, we're not experts in this area or this field because quite frankly, this is a unprecedented event. I mean, I think I said the previous time, the last pandemic event of this, which had such a catastrophic and life-changing, I guess, effect on life was what the Spanish flu way back in early 20th century. So life has completely changed since then. But in terms of us getting back to, recovery pattern, I mean, that's hard to predict. If recovery pattern means going back to normal, I don't think that we'll be back to normal for a very long time. I think being back to normal will depend on some immunity to this because that's normal. We're immune to these diseases. So until a vaccine is developed and proven to be effective, I don't really see a situation where we're going to be back to normal, hugging, holding hands, walking around without masks, gathering, having concerts with everybody there. The borders open fully, but at the same time, we can't continue as it is right now where there's nothing going on. That would just lead to economic ruin. So it's a very difficult question to answer because quite frankly, we don't, let me not speak for everybody else. I don't know. I can't say for certain or with any degree of confidence. What I can say is that we're in a precarious situation, and until there is a vaccine, I really don't see a quote-unquote recovery pattern where we get back to normalcy.
Okay, Timar, any thoughts on that?
Certainly. I think in a previous interview, I would have echoed the same sentiments that the gentlemen have pretty much put forward. Just to give a different perspective, though, this event worldwide is being compared to what they call a Great Depression, right? Which is one of the most severe economic catastrophes the world has ever experienced, right? In terms of our region, one IMF expert pretty much would have said that, you know, he's seen a lost decade, right? So that means that this event could set us back by another 10 years, you know.
Wow.
Jamaica's economy is expected to basically lose more than 5.6% of its value this year. And this is assuming a base case scenario of a recovery starting in June of this year. And as you would have heard from the men before, that seems very unlikely at this time because a vaccine hasn't been developed. We haven't found any reliable treatment methods. There are more developed countries than us that are still battling and trying to figure their way out of this crisis. And we are very dependent on those countries as well, especially as it relates to tourism. So if there's a pattern that we're looking for, I would say that it's gonna be a very slow and long recovery, you know, and we may find ourselves in a situation where we might have to knock at IMF's door again sometime in the near future, right? So those are just my thoughts.
Okay, well, do you share the theory? You mentioned tourism. You share the theory, Timar, and we'll get to the others as well, that Jamaica's close proximity to the United States will be an opportunity for our tourism product when the industry does reopen?
I think proximity is definitely an advantage, you know, just in terms of the cost of travel, you know, the longer your distance generally, the more you generally have to pay for airfare, right?
Sure.
But separate and apart from that, and it might just be as a result of that same factor, Jamaica's tourism industry is supported significantly by US tourists, right? So they're a very important market for us. So we do rely on signals from the US to determine, for example, how much and by when we can expect some level of recovery to happen, at least as it relates to tourism. And they're a very important trading partner outside of tourism. So it's one of those countries we have to pay attention to in terms of what their recovery pattern looks like. A lot of analysts are anticipating what they call a V-shaped recovery for those economies, which means that it's going to be a short and very sharp recovery. So we will see how that works out. You know, Jamaica's case seems to be more, you know, one that's going to take a little bit longer, I believe, you know, because of our dependence and the structure of our economy is a lot different.
Sure. Well, the expression is when America sneezes, we catch a cold. So we are quite dependent on them for a lot of things. Although a lot of our tourism does come from Russia, Europe, etc. André, Chrevaughn, what do you think about the question?
I think it's a bit optimistic to say that proximity will be. It's a bit optimistic and a bit simplistic to simply say that proximity will be an advantage or will be great, because sure, yeah, it could, but the fact of the matter is, touching on the previous point, we don't have a vaccine, we don't really have any reliable treatments, we don't have any way to actually counter the spread or effectively treat the virus. Now, Europe contributed in 2018, which is the most recent figures that we have from Jamaica Tourist Board. Europe contributed about 12-13% of visitors to Jamaica in 2018. The United States was at 66%, Canada was about 16%. The UK by itself, so Europe, remember, Europe has said about 12-13, UK by itself is about 9%. These are countries which are still struggling with the pandemic, still struggling with treatment and with curtailing the spread of the virus. Now, let's say that we actually get to a point where, you know, a miracle happens, we get a treatment, we get a vaccine, we get a cure, whatever you want it to be. The fact of the matter is that the damage economically has been done. Now, travel is a leisure activity, it's not a necessity, right? So if people are out of work, people are trying to catch up on bills which they had before and they haven't been paying, if they're in debt effectively, and they're trying to get back to normalcy, travel or leisure activity is the last thing on their mind, particularly international travel. You really don't have the resources to do that. So how can they actually say, hey, let's take a trip to Jamaica from England or from, I don't know, California in the United States or Florida or wherever? How can they actually afford that to patronize our tourism product? And also, let's take the consideration, you know, the changes which may actually have to be afoot, which may cause our tourism product to be more expensive as well, you know, to actually curtail the spreading, to actually keep people safe, to promote social distancing. You know, those things come at an additional cost. Who eats that cost? Likely it's going to be the person who's trying to patronize, because, you know, a popular theory in economics, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Somebody has to pay that. So I think it's a bit optimistic and a bit short-sighted. It's simplistic. It doesn't look at the whole picture.
Sure.
Can I interject?
Yes, Chrevaughn.
Well, Timar.
Oh, sorry, Timar.
Yes. So I wouldn't disagree with Andre's assessment. I think the interpretation of the question is a little bit different, which is why I guess he would have seen it from, he would have taken that angle. So just to make it clear, I'm not in disagreement. I think what I was responding to really was whether or not it will be a sort of an opportunity, the fact that we're so close.
Of a competitive advantage.
Right. So
I agree with you.
Once the economy opens up, once we return to normalcy, then it will be an advantage. Proximity, definitely. And it does tie into your concern about, you know, persons having the discretionary income to be able to spend. You know, in addition to that, we do know that Jamaica is among one of the cheaper destinations in the, well, it's among
region.
the cheapest, yeah, in the region in terms of tourism. So if it is you apply the argument of increasing cost and so forth, I would expect that, you know, our costs wouldn't necessarily increase as much. You know, we've managed to make our product the cheapest for the longest while, you know, and the measures that other countries would have to implement would pretty much mirror ours as well. So, you know, all being equal, our costs should remain below the average for the region.
Okay. That's fair.
All right, so I'd like to weigh in as well. I think what I'd like to also give consideration to is the fact that we are in a position where we, as in Jamaica and the Caribbean, would have to manage the reported cases or manage the spread of the virus. Because unlike what pundits have been saying in terms of, and you may see people on social media saying, oh, as soon as we're able to go outside, they'll be traveling all over. That may not necessarily be the case. The fact of the matter is that persons are going to be more cautious and they're going to be way more selective in where they go. So far, we are probably, well, for the Caribbean, well, our numbers is at what, 490, probably as at yesterday, right? So we're doing much better than other competitors for the tourism products, such as Dominican Republic, right? Who has, I think Dominican Republic has north of about 8,000 cases, probably, right? So I think proximity gives us an advantage, but there's also the situation where it may come down to how are we managing these results or these cases, the virus, better than other competitors out there. Because I mean, at the end of the day, when a tourist is thinking about where to spend his money, he's also thinking about the experience that he's going to get. Cost is a factor as well, but safety is always a factor given COVID-19 right now.
Of course, safety would be the biggest factor.
Biggest factor. So we have been doing well relatively in managing the amount of reported cases and the spread of the virus. And that may be an impact or an influence going forward in terms of the tourism product.
For those persons who do their due diligence and see that we are ahead of some of the other countries in our region.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think we also have to factor in public opinion, as in the citizens of Jamaica, their opinion and their feelings and their sentiment, because the virus has been somewhat perceived as one which has been brought to us by external. It's been imported. It isn't something that is, it's originating here. So we also have to take into consideration how the population will view more people coming in who could potentially have this virus. Will also that people look at our governing, our people responsible for governing and say, yes, bring these people in and have them, patronize under this tourism product, or will we say, hold on, ordinary citizens, when they come in, they have to go into a 2-week quarantine and pay this and do that, but yet the foreigners come in and they go to a hotel and on the beach and fraternizing with the staff and whoever else and, having a jolly good time willy-nilly like that. Is that something that the public will say, no, that's fine, we're good with that? Or will we say, what's good for the goose have to be good for the gander? Or will fear actually win out and say, no, we want to keep the borders closed for a time longer?
A certain period longer, right. So we might be in that one for the long haul a little bit. All right, gentlemen, let's switch gears before we run out of time for today. Chrevaughn, you now hold the largest cash portfolio of all the contestants in the competition, 14% of your portfolio, it looks like. Do you believe that this has helped to propel you into first place in the competition?
So I think propel is a strong word. That is the right word to use. Because the first place position is of little significance in a declining portfolio value, so there's little for me to celebrate, I'll be very honest, right? But I'm working with harsh economic times, and the climate really, there's significant volatility. I mean, about 2 weeks ago, my portfolio would have valued 425,000 thereabout. I mean, less than the principal. And I think as at today, it's probably 396 or thereabout. So that shows you the level of volatility that we're seeing within the market. Right? The truth is that that 14% cash was held. So let me just step back. You would recall that we had some restrictions in terms of the amount of our portfolio that had to be invested in a fixed income asset, right? I think in some instances that kind of restricted how we could have, some of the risks that we could have taken on initially, right? Upon that restriction being lifted, I think that 14% was actually earmarked to take on a lot more risk towards the end of the competition, prepare for some of the IPOs that would have been in the pipeline. However, that has worked in my favor because I think after I saw where most of the stock prices were coming down, I decided to hold my position. And because of that large cash volume that I had, my portfolio wasn't exposed to as much as the volatility that other participants would have actually encountered, right? So I think that to answer your question, that 14% cash holding would have contributed to me my portfolio being less affected and me, being in the first position right now.
But put you in a better spot right now. Timar and Andre, what are your thoughts on holding some cash versus being fully invested at this time?
In this time, it does help to have some cash. It does offer stability, as we obviously see. Not only cash, but also if you had some short-term liquid securities, money market type instruments or near cash instruments in our portfolios, that would have helped as well. I think if I had to do it over, I probably would reserve some of my portfolio for short-term liquid securities in the money market space. You know, I would keep some cash too, because the cash is important in terms of, you know, taking advantage of opportunities as they arise, as thin as they are now. But yes, cash and near cash is very critical to actually, you know, success in this competition.
Especially at this time. André?
I mirror the sentiments of my competitors. I think Timar hit the nail on the head in terms of the importance of having that liquid, safe type asset that isn't really susceptible to changes in market value, so it isn't susceptible to the fluctuations and the volatility of the market per se. So that's your cash and your very liquid money market instruments, which are basically near cash instruments, you know, your repo assets, such and so forth. Also, I agree with Chrevaughn. Chrevaughn was very prudent in that he saw what was happening with the assets, and he said, okay, the situation is that pretty much everything that's out in the market, they're not really getting the traction, the buying pressure to push the price up, right? So he was holding it for newer securities, which seems to be what people are holding on to cash for and trying to buy and push up the price for. So he was very prudent in that regard. But at the same time, I know where my headspace was at. The headspace is no guts, no glory. I was pretty much going for the risk. Like, hey, this is a good asset right here. Hindsight is 2020, you know. I can say, you know, no, I can say this thing was coming and it's going to basically box all the food out of my mouth. But at the time, I don't know this. I see something and it looks good. And I said, hey, let's go for it because this looks good, you know, it's undervalued right now. And eventually when things settle down and we rebound, because I mean, previously I would have expressed that I thought that the selling pressure in the market and the decline in the overall market was transitory. It would have passed, right? But I no longer feel that way because of the COVID-19 epidemic. It's no longer transitory. It has a longer time horizon. But at the time, it's all guts and glory. It's, hey, let's buy this and see if the price can go. Because if I keep in cash, the fact of the matter is that my portfolio value would never go up. It remained the same. So I went for the guts and sought glory, but instead I courted and ended up being married to disgrace.
What a lovely metaphor to end that moment. All right, like guys, let's take a quick break. We'll be back with more with our three professionals after this.